I was washing dishes when my son walked in with a stranger in a suit. "Mom, this is a realtor. We're listing the house." I turned off the faucet, dried my hands slowly, and looked at them both. What they didn't know was that I'd already been to the county clerk's office that morning. My son handed me a garbage bag at 6 in the morning. "Start packing, Mom. You have 2 weeks." I looked at the bag, then at the boy I raised alone on a nurse's salary. I set the bag on the counter and picked up my phone instead. By that evening, the front door didn't answer to his key anymore. "You don't even understand what you're signing, Mom." My son laughed when I asked to read the paperwork he brought to Sunday dinner. His wife smiled behind him. I understood every word. It was a transfer of deed. I nodded, excused myself, and called the one person my son never expected me to call, his father's attorney. They moved my furniture to the garage while I was at church. When I got home, my bedroom was empty, and my grandson was painting the walls gray. My son shrugged. "We need the space, Mom." I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I walked to the kitchen drawer where I kept a folder he had never seen. "Face it, Mom. You can't live alone anymore." My son said it in front of his wife, his kids, and my neighbor. It was standing in my own living room, perfectly healthy, holding a bag of groceries I carried in myself. I didn't respond. I just waited until everyone left. Then I made one phone call. That changed everything. The call connected to a 24-hour locksmith service. It was the same company that Thomas Arsamont, my late husband's attorney, had recommended years ago when I asked about home security. I stood in my kitchen with the lights off, reading my address quietly into the phone. I glanced toward the driveway to make sure Derek's car was gone. It was. "I need every exterior lock changed by morning," I said. The woman on the line asked if I was in danger. I told her no. I told her I was protecting what was mine. She confirmed a technician would arrive at 6 in the morning. I hung up and placed the phone face down on the counter. My hands were steady. My chest was tight. I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the folder. Inside was the original deed to the house, recorded in 1994 with the East Baton Rouge Parish Clerk of Court. It listed one name, Gloria Jean Whitmore, sole owner. I ran my finger along the notary stamp and whispered to myself, "You forgot whose name is on this house, baby." I took my phone back out and photographed every page, front and back. Then I emailed the images to a secure address Thomas had given me 2 years ago, just in case. I moved through the house in the dark after that. I cataloged everything my son and his wife had rearranged. My bedroom furniture was stacked in the garage. Ronald's old recliner had been shoved into the utility room. The walls of my bedroom were covered in gray paint, still wet. I could smell it, sharp and chemical. Those walls had been soft yellow for 20 years. I opened a small notebook and started writing. Date, action taken, items moved, persons present. If they wanted a record, I was going to give them a record. By 11 at night, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea. The garbage bag Derek had handed me that morning was still sitting on the counter where I left it. I picked it up, folded it neatly into a square, and tucked it into the folder alongside the deed. "That bag is going to be Exhibit A," I said out loud. Then I set my alarm for 5:30 in the morning, 30 minutes before the locksmith was due to arrive. At 5:45, I heard a truck pull into the driveway. I opened the front door in my robe and house shoes. The locksmith was a man named Gerald, mid-50s, wearing a ball cap with a company logo on it. He looked at me and asked if everything was all right. I smiled. "Everything is fine now," I said. "Change them all. Front, back, side, and garage." He didn't ask questions. He just got to work. By 7:12 that morning, I held 4 new keys in my hand, and my son held none. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Gloria, and this story is one I never imagined I'd need to tell. I know it might sound extreme, but every detail is real. Every document exists, and I kept every single one. Before we go further, I want to ask you to hit that like button. It helps more people hear stories like mine, stories that might protect someone they love. And please, stay until the very end, because the biggest revelation comes late. Tell me in the comments, what city are you in right now? I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm curious how far this story will travel. Last time, someone from Lagos, Nigeria left a comment, and it made my whole week. What I'm about to share involves my only son, the boy I raised by myself, the child I worked double shifts for, and it involves a betrayal I almost didn't survive. But I did survive it, and here's how. Now let me take you back to the beginning, so you understand how a mother and son ended up on opposite sides of a locked door. My name is Gloria Jean Whitmore. I'm 71 years old. I'm a retired registered nurse, and I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a 3-bedroom brick ranch house that my late husband Ronald and I purchased in 1994. Ronald passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2011. After he was gone, I kept working. I kept paying the mortgage. And in 2016, I wrote the very last check. I framed that payoff letter. It's still hanging in my hallway. My routine is simple. I wake up at 6 in the morning, make my coffee, read my devotional, and walk 1 mile around the neighborhood. I tend my vegetable garden. On Wednesdays, I volunteer at the church food pantry. My doctor, Dr. Ambrose, confirmed at my last physical that my blood pressure, my cognition, and my mobility are all excellent. He told me I had the vitals of a woman 15 years younger. I kept that report too. My son Derek is 44 years old. He's my only child. I raised him alone after Ronald left when Derek was 9. Ronald came back briefly before his death. He and I reconciled, but he never rebuilt things with Derek. I don't blame Derek for the anger he carried, but I worked nights at Our Lady of the Lake Medical Center for 29 years to give that boy everything. I missed school plays so he could have braces and a college fund. Derek married Vanessa 5 years ago. After the wedding, things started to shift. Slowly, the Sunday dinners became less frequent. The phone calls got shorter. Then came the requests for money. A car repair here. A tuition payment for the grandchildren there. A medical bill. I always helped. I always paid. And I kept a small spiral notebook in my nightstand where I logged every amount. I didn't keep it because I was suspicious. I kept it because I'm a nurse. We chart everything. The first real warning came 8 months ago. Derek asked me, casual as anything, if the house was in both our names. I said no. He went quiet. 2 weeks later, Vanessa asked if I had ever considered a living trust. I smiled and changed the subject. But that's when I felt it. Something cold, moving under the surface. I started locking my file cabinet after that. 3 months ago, Derek arrived unannounced on a Tuesday evening. He had a manila envelope under his arm. He sat at my kitchen table and slid out a document titled Quitclaim Deed Transfer. He pointed to a flag line at the bottom and said, "Just sign here, Mom. It keeps things simple when the time comes." He said it like he was asking me to sign for a package. He had a notary waiting in his car. I picked up the document and read it line by line. The form would transfer full ownership of my home to Derek James Whitmore for a consideration of $1. $1. There was no reversionary clause, no life estate provision, no retained rights of any kind. I looked at my son and asked calmly, "And where exactly would I live after I sign this?" He told me I was overthinking it. The next day, Vanessa called. Her voice was sweet but rehearsed. She suggested I might be more comfortable in a senior living community. She even had a brochure from a place called Magnolia Pines. I looked it up that night. It was a Medicaid-funded shared room facility, 45 minutes outside the city. Monthly cost was $1,200. My house was appraised at $289,000. They wanted to trade my home for a shared room with a stranger. I declined the transfer politely. That Sunday at dinner, Derek's whole demeanor changed. He didn't hug me at the door. He didn't compliment the food. He left early. Vanessa didn't come at all. I washed the dishes alone. And when I turned around, I saw the manila envelope sitting on the counter again. This time there was a yellow sticky note on it. It said, "Think about it." He left it like a threat wrapped in yellow paper. The following week, I drove to the East Baton Rouge Parish Clerk of Court. I confirmed what I already knew. The house was in my name and my name only. The clerk printed a certified copy of the deed, stamped and dated. I placed it in my folder. I also asked about filing a formal affidavit of property interest. The clerk gave me the form. I didn't fill it out yet. I wanted to see how far my son was willing to go. I didn't have to wait long. A few days later, I found a piece of mail in my mailbox addressed to Derek at my home address. It was a pre-approval letter from Gulf South Mortgage for a home equity line of credit in the amount of $175,000. It referenced my property address. My property. He had applied for a loan against my house. A house he doesn't own. My hands trembled when I read it, but I photocopied the letter before placing it back in the envelope. Then I went online. I checked my property records through the parish assessor's website. Someone had submitted a change of mailing address request for my tax correspondence. My property tax notices were being redirected to Derek's home address. The change had been made 6 weeks earlier. He was intercepting my mail. My own son was rerouting my tax documents so I wouldn't see them. I printed a screen, dated it, added it to the folder. I called my bank, First Guarantee, and asked if anyone had inquired about my accounts. The branch manager told me that a man identifying himself as my son had come in 3 weeks earlier. He asked about adding his name to my savings account. He was turned away because I had a password-protected account flag in place. I set that flag up in 2019 after a fraud seminar at church. Thank God I listened. That evening I called Derek. I kept my voice even. I asked him if he had any paperwork I should know about. He laughed nervously and said he was just getting things organized in case something happened to me. I asked, "In case what happens, Derek?" He told me I was being paranoid. I said goodnight. Then I sat at my kitchen table and wrote the entire conversation in my notebook. Date, time, duration, his exact words. I opened a new file on my laptop. I titled it House File. DONOT delete. I scanned every document. The deed, the quitclaim attempt, the mortgage pre-approval letter, the tax redirect printout, the bank inquiry record, my handwritten log. I backed everything up on a USB drive and brought it next door to my neighbor Lorraine. Lorraine is a retired paralegal. I told her, "If anything happens to me, open this." She didn't ask questions. She locked it in her home safe. 2 Saturdays later, Derek arrived with Vanessa. They stood in my kitchen and told me I had 2 weeks to decide. Either sign the deed transfer, or they would petition the court for a capacity evaluation. They were going to claim I was unfit to manage my own affairs. Vanessa added in that practiced voice of hers, "We're only thinking of your safety, Mom." I looked at Vanessa. I said nothing, but I noticed she was holding her phone at an angle. She was recording the conversation. The following Monday, I received a certified letter. It was from an attorney named Craig Boudreau, representing Derek and Vanessa Whitmore. The letter requested a voluntary transfer of property to prevent future legal proceedings. It cited Louisiana Civil Code Article 389, regarding protective custody of vulnerable adults. I read it twice. They hired a lawyer to call me incompetent. I ran a cardiac ward for 12 years. Then Derek showed up unannounced again and started measuring the rooms. He told me he and Vanessa were planning renovations for when the transition happens. He brought a contractor named Steve, who walked through the house taking notes. I stood in the hallway and watched 2 strangers measure my bedroom. While I was still standing in it, I asked them both to leave. Derek looked at me and said, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." That afternoon, my grandson called me. He was 16. He was crying. He told me his father said that Grandma was losing her mind and might need to go to a nursing home. He asked me if it was true. I sat on my porch and held the phone close to my ear. "Baby," I said, "my mind is the sharpest thing in this family right now." I reassured him, but I noted the call. Derek was now using the grandchildren as emotional leverage. That evening, I found the side door to my garage had been jimmied open. Inside, my stored furniture had been rearranged. Several boxes of financial records were missing. Old tax returns, insurance documents. I called the non-emergency police line and filed a report. Case number 2024-04178. I told the officer, "My son is trying to erase me from my own house." The officer noted the report and advised me to secure the premises. And that's when I made the call. The one call Derek never expected. I called Thomas Arsamont. He was the attorney who had represented my late ex-husband, Ronald. Thomas was 68 now and semi-retired, but he was the one who had drafted Ronald's will in 2009, a will that left everything to me, including a $40,000 life insurance payout that Derek never knew about. Thomas answered on the second ring. "Gloria," he said, "I've been wondering when you'd call. Tell me everything." I brought Thomas the folder. He reviewed it within 48 hours. He confirmed what I suspected. The quitclaim deed Derek presented was legally aggressive. Had I signed it, I would have irrevocably transferred my home with no right of return. The mortgage pre-approval attempt constituted potential fraud. The tax mail redirect was a federal offense. Thomas looked at me over his glasses and said, "Your son committed 3 actionable offenses before breakfast." Thomas referred me to a housing rights attorney named Denise Thibodeau. Denise specialized in elder financial abuse cases. She filed a formal complaint with the Louisiana Attorney General's Elder Abuse Unit and requested a full case review. She also filed a motion to block any future property transfers. Without my verified, notarized, and independently witnessed consent, Denise looked me in the eye and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, you are not a victim. You are a witness, and witnesses win cases." Thomas also contacted First Guarantee Bank directly. He requested a formal incident report regarding Derek's attempt to access my accounts. The bank's compliance officer confirmed the attempt was flagged in their system and could be released under subpoena. The total in my savings account was $112,400. That's 30 years of night shifts. And my son tried to walk in and take it like it was nothing. Denise gave me one piece of advice that changed everything. She told me to stop confronting Derek. Let him believe his plan was working. Continue documenting. Let him make the next move. The more confident he gets, she said, the more evidence he creates. I agreed. I stopped answering Derek's calls. I left the manila envelopes sitting on the kitchen counter, and I waited. Derek took my silence as surrender. He called Lorraine and told her, "My mother finally sees reason. We're handling the transition next week." Lorraine said nothing. She texted me immediately. I read the message. I smiled, and I wrote the date in my notebook. He had now made a false statement to a third-party witness. The following Sunday, Derek came to the house with a new set of documents. This time it was called a family property agreement, prepared by his attorney Craig Boudreau. The agreement granted Derek full ownership. It gave me a right to reside for 12 months, and it included a clause waiving my right to any future legal challenge. He set a pen on the table in front of me. "Come on, Mom," he said. "Let's just get this done." I picked up the pen. I held it for a long moment. Derek leaned forward. He thought I was about to sign, but I set the pen down and told him I needed one more day to read it over. I asked him to leave the documents with me. He agreed. He looked relieved. He hugged me for the first time in weeks. After he left, I scanned every page of that agreement and emailed it to Denise. He hugged me like he'd already won. I let him believe it. Denise reviewed the document and confirmed it contained multiple unconscionable clauses. That evening, Vanessa sent me a text message. "So glad we're all on the same page now. We'll take good care of the house." She added a heart emoji. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Thomas. Then I replied with a single heart emoji. Vanessa sent back a smiley face. She sent me a heart emoji. while planning to take my home. I saved that too. The screenshots were time-stamped and stored. Denise coordinated with the Attorney General's office and scheduled a formal review hearing for the following Thursday at the East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse. I was not required to notify Derek. The state was involved now. The hearing would address the fraudulent mortgage application, the mail redirect, the coercive property transfer attempts, and the police report. I ironed my best navy dress the night before. I wanted to look like exactly what I am, a woman in full possession of her mind. Thursday morning, 9 a.m, East Baton Rouge Parish Courthouse, room 204. I sat at the petitioner's table with Denise Thibodeau and Thomas Arsamont. Across the room, Derek and Vanessa sat with Craig Boudreau. They looked confused. They had only received notice of the hearing 48 hours prior. Derek looked at me and mouthed the words, "What is this?" I folded my hands on the table and faced forward. I did not respond. Denise presented the evidence in chronological order. The quitclaim deed attempt, the mortgage pre-approval letter, the tax mail redirect, the bank access attempt, the police report for the garage break-in, the family property agreement with its unconscionable clauses, the screenshot of Vanessa's text message, and my documentation log. 47 pages. The hearing officer was Judge Clarice Duval. She reviewed each item in silence. She read every page. The room was so quiet. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking behind me. Craig Boudreau stood and tried to argue that Derek was acting out of concern for his aging mother's welfare. He called the property discussions informal family negotiations. Judge Duval listened. Then she asked one question. Did your client apply for a home equity line of credit on a property he does not own? Boudreau asked for a moment to confer with his client. That moment lasted 4 minutes. He had no answer. Judge Duval issued her preliminary ruling. A temporary restraining order. It prohibited Derek and Vanessa Whitmore from entering my property, from contacting my financial institutions, from initiating any property transfer without court approval. She referred the mortgage application to the Louisiana Office of Financial Institutions for Fraud Investigation. She ordered a forensic review of the tax redirect. Derek's face went white. Vanessa grabbed his arm. I didn't look at them. Before she closed the hearing, Judge Duval addressed me directly. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, this court recognizes your right to your home, your finances, and your autonomy. No one, not even family, is entitled to take those from you. I nodded. I thanked her. I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, holding the same folder I'd pulled from that kitchen drawer weeks ago. Derek called my name in the hallway. I kept walking. The consequences came fast after that. Within 72 hours, Gulf South Mortgage formally denied Derek's home equity application and flagged his file for fraudulent property representation. His credit report was annotated. He called my phone 11 times in one day. I did not answer. On the 12th call, he left a voicemail. Mom, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I saved the voicemail. Craig Boudreau withdrew as Derek's attorney, citing irreconcilable differences in case strategy. Derek tried to find new counsel. 2 attorneys declined after reviewing the hearing transcript. Vanessa's name appeared on several of the documents as a co-signatory, which exposed her to potential liability as well. His own lawyer quit. That tells you everything you need to know. The Louisiana Attorney General's Elder Abuse Unit opened a formal investigation. Case number EA 2024-0921. An investigator named Renee Castillo contacted me for a recorded interview. I handed her my full documentation binder. It was 63 pages by then. She looked through it and shook her head slowly. She said, Mrs. Whitmore, you built this case better than most attorneys. I told her I learned to document in the ICU. She smiled. Derek's employer, a mid-level logistics company, was notified of the fraud investigation through a routine background check update. He was placed on administrative leave pending review. And Vanessa's real estate license, which I didn't even know she had, came under scrutiny because of her involvement in the property transfer scheme. The Louisiana Real Estate Commission opened a separate inquiry. The dominoes didn't just fall. They shattered. Lorraine came over one evening and handed me the USB drive. I held it in my palm and looked at it for a long time. A small black rectangle that held the entire truth. I placed it back in the kitchen drawer, right next to the folded garbage bag Derek had handed me that morning. Both items were still there, but they meant something entirely different now. One was meant to erase me. The other saved me. Gerald, the locksmith, came back one more time. I had him install a smart lock system on every door. He gave me a discount. I programmed the code myself. He stood on my porch when it was done and said, "Ma'am, nobody is getting through that door without your say-so." I smiled and told him, "That's been the point all along." I repainted my bedroom walls. I took them from gray back to the soft yellow I'd chosen in 2003, the color Ronald picked from a Home Depot swatch card. The spring before he got sick, I moved my furniture back inside with help from Lorraine and 2 women from church. The recliner went right back by the window where it belonged. That chair belonged to a man who loved me. It deserved to be in the light. My grandson came to visit on his own one Saturday. He rode up on his bicycle and sat on the porch steps. He looked at me with his father's eyes and said, "Grandma, I'm sorry about what Dad did." I handed him a glass of sweet tea and sat beside him. "You are not your father's choices, baby," I said, "and you are always welcome in this house." He came back every Saturday after that. Thomas helped me establish a revocable living trust. My grandson was named as the future beneficiary of the house. The trust included a provision that Derek was permanently excluded from any claim to the property. It was filed, notarized, and recorded with the parish clerk. I also updated my power of attorney. Lorraine is now my legal representative. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of clarity. I went back to my routine. 6 in the morning coffee, devotional, 1-mile walk, garden in the morning, food pantry on Wednesdays. At my next checkup, my blood pressure was 118/72. Dr. Ambrose looked at the chart and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I laughed. "I'm doing what I've always done," I told him. "I'm standing in my own house." The hardest part of all of this was not the legal battle. It wasn't changing the locks. It wasn't sitting in that courtroom. The hardest part was accepting that my own son looked at me and saw an obstacle instead of a person. I don't hate Derek. I love him. I will always love him. But love doesn't mean I let him take what I built. I haven't spoken to him in 4 months. The door isn't closed forever, but it is locked, and I hold the key. I'm telling you this because I know there is someone listening right now who is going through something like this. Maybe it's your son. Maybe it's a daughter. Maybe it's a nephew or a caregiver. And they're telling you that you don't understand, that you can't manage, that it's time to let go. Don't let go. Document. Call someone. Protect yourself. I spent 30 years charting patients' vitals, medications, and conditions. I never thought I'd need to chart my own son's behavior to save my home. But the skills God gave me for the hospital, He let me use for my own life. Every receipt, every text, every date, write it down. So tell me, if your own child handed you a garbage bag and told you to start packing in the house you paid for, the house you raised them in, what would you have done? I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your home is your home. Your name is on that deed, and no one gets to erase you. Thank you for listening, dear ones. I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong.